Good afternoon, everyone. I am Michael Steelman, Director of Alumni Career Management and Professional Networks at William & Mary, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar, Navigating the Complexities of Entrepreneurial Growth. Today's webinar is part of a new William & Mary webinar series and is made possible by the support of the William & Mary Alumni Association. As we seek to provide relevant programming for our lifelong commitment to our alumni, we welcome any feedback and ideas to make this a valuable resource for you. Just a few housekeeping items before I introduce our guest presenter. It's important to note that if you are experiencing any audio or video difficulties, to please call the Adobe Technical Support number at 1-800-422-3623. Also, questions are welcome, and our presenter will answer as many questions that time will allow. Please just submit your questions by typing in the box just below the PowerPoint presentation. Throughout the webinar, I will monitor the questions and share them with our presenter at the end of his presentation. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest presenter today. With over 3 decades of operations and management experience, Brad Eure has developed a sharp eye for what it takes to succeed in today's business world. After having successfully run, grown, and sold several radio stations in the Richmond, Norfolk, and Charlottesville markets of Virginia, Brad is now an expert consultant to companies seeking to improve their management and build their success. A graduate of our very own College of William & Mary with a BS in Business Administration, Brad is proud to have served as president of the Virginia Association of Broadcasters and a member of the National Association of Broadcasters, as well as on the board of many local organizations including the Charlottesville Chamber of Commerce and the Salvation Army. Brad is a past chairman of the Bank Board of Union First Market Bank, one of the largest independent banks in Virginia. Brad is Certified Professional Behaviors Analyst, a Certified Professional Motivators Analyst, a Certified Trimetrics HD Analyst, and a Certified Stages of Growth Strategist. We are truly delighted to have Brad join us. Great, now it's working. Thank you, Brad.
Okay. So we work with the leadership teams, CEOs and leadership teams of small businesses, usually privately held, and to help them flourish. And by flourish, I mean helping the owners get what they want out of not only their business, but their life. In order for the business to flourish, their team members must flourish. So they need to be in a position that matches their strengths and that they have an opportunity for career development and growth so that it's a win-win for both sides. Under all that, we work with the company to help them understand that if you're not growing, you're dying. So it's first understanding that you need to improve your product or service, always be getting better. And if that means that the company is able to grow revenues or grow profits, locations, that's all good. But they need to first take care of what they have and make sure that's working. A little bit about my history and why I'm so passionate about helping small businesses. After graduation, went to work for my family's radio stations in Petersburg and learned to manage from my father. And he is what I have come to determine as a poker. And a poker is someone who is a micromanager, someone that is in someone's business all the time. And I became one. I thought that's what you did. So I became a poker, managed through poking, a micromanager. And in the radio world, I didn't have a lot of expertise. I remember vividly doing music logs. So a long time ago, the announcers would follow a handwritten log with songs that were programmed ahead of time. And I didn't like the way the music director was doing the way he was arranging the music. So instead of correcting him or advising him or coaching him, I did the micromanager poker thing and just took it over. And I didn't know anything about music, but the micromanager is one that thinks that if you work hard, get there early, leave late, through osmosis, people will pick up what you want to do. And I remember being on vacation, doing music logs and thinking that was the way to do it. I was working hard. I was getting praise for it. And at the time, didn't realize what I was doing wrong. Despite the way I managed, we did well. Sold the station. At the time was the #1 FM in Richmond. Did very well. Ended up in Charlottesville buying stations. And I was still a poker. Had not learned much. There were more people, more problems. I didn't have enough arms. And life became miserable. I was trying to do it all myself. I remember being a sales manager, a business manager, doing payroll, and still trying to own and deal with the bank and all those things. One day after a staff meeting, a person came up to me and said, "Hey, why don't you let so-and-so just do their job?" And that was the first time I'd really gotten some feedback that maybe I was doing things incorrectly. It also, I've got a friend, he was termed Little Hitler. He was a micromanager, obviously, and that term kind of got to him, and he started making changes after that. So after I was told that why don't you let somebody do their job, I started looking for things. I found a book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth, the Entrepreneurial Myth. On the foreword or first chapter in that book, Michael says, you don't own a business to be the hub of the wheel. And I went, ah! I slapped myself on the forehead and said, wow, what a concept. Really got into some of the things that Michael suggested. He is very much a process person, so that if someone leaves, all the duties, all the responsibilities, and how to do them are outlined, so you're not reinventing the wheel every time. It's a hard thing to do in a small business because you're busy running your business and you really don't have a lot of time for that. But it made a huge difference in my operations, and began to work on the business, not in the business. Again, had great success, sold the stations in Charlottesville, and after that became a Dami for a little while. That's a cross between a dad and a mom. I was a house dad for a while, and discovered that was not for me, and started the consulting business so I can share what I've learned with others. In trying to perfect my skill as a coach and as a consultant, started looking for some tools to use, and a lot of things were really geared towards large companies. A good example of that is Jim Collins, his book Good to Great. Really good concepts, but all focused on large companies. He talks in that book about getting the right people on the bus, but he doesn't really tell you how to do that. And even if he did, it would be geared, I think, towards large Fortune 500 companies, and HR and those size companies is much different than the small business. So I kept searching and found a gentleman named James Fisher. He did some research and wrote a book called Navigating the Growth Curve, and this is very much focused on small businesses, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Liked his material so much that Clay and I have become certified growth strategists. And in that book, he focuses on 650 different organizations, successful small businesses. The book is a bit hard to read. He tries to work it into a novel, and it's really more about what happens at companies at different stages and the applied knowledge learned from that. So as we go through this, we work with primarily for-profit companies, but this applies to any organization. It's all about people, and the concept is the more people you have, the more complex your organization becomes, and the more you must change. not only how you lead, but your systems and processes as well. So this is going to be interactive. A little bit later on, we're going to ask your size of business. And then James Fisher identified 27 challenges that are familiar to all of these small businesses, and we're going to ask which of these issues you may be facing, up to 5, and then we'll talk about those issues. My goal is for you to be able to leave this meeting with something actionable, something that you can take away and put to work right away. So understanding your issues, second bullet point here, creates alignment within your organization. Lets everybody have a say in what the issues are. Often CEOs are removed, don't completely understand what's going on. It also gives you a language so you can communicate on those issues and quickly get beyond the question marks and get into solving problems. So of the 7 stages, stage 1 is the smallest. It involves 1 to 10 employees, is very CEO-centric. And there's usually, it's businesses that are just starting out, but some people can choose to stay under 10 employees. So some of the issues are going to be different in an established company with 10 or fewer employees and someone growing through that stage. Last bullet point here is very important. Hire for fit, not for skill. The issue here is the CEO can be a poker in stage 1 and also in stage 2, but definitely in stage 1. The CEO owner is touching everyone every day. So skill level is not as important as fit. This becomes a problem later on, as we will discuss. The second stage, ramp up, 11 to 19 employees, still very CEO-centric. It focuses on growth. You're really trying to get any kind of revenue in the door that you can, so you haven't really focused on a niche yet. And towards the end of this stage, where you're getting to 17, 18 or so employees, the CEO is beginning to run out of arms, and their arms aren't long enough. So starting to delineate department heads a little bit. Stage 3, delegation, 20 to 34 employees. I call this the teen years. This is where you don't know if you're going up or down. The hormones are crazy. The issue is the CEO having to relinquish control and establish some department heads or leadership outside of the CEO. So there's often a lot of looping. So people had been used to working directly with the CEO, and as you hire a sales manager, for instance, or a production manager, there's looping going on. At times, CEOs are not good trainers. So when they start putting these people in as department heads, they're still doing the poking thing. It's a lot of energy working hard, and there's not a lot of time taken to define roles, to establish training, to work with the department heads to help them be better, to move their careers along. So you start having some staff revolution, people starting to get disconcerted with the CEO. The CEO may be a bottleneck here. If all the decisions have to go through the CEO, if he or she has not relinquished control, they start to become part of the problem, not the solution. Tough stage, 20 to 34 employees. See a lot of issues with these. Stage 4, this is where you start to develop professional leaders. And if you remember back to stage 1, where you're hiring for fit and not for skill, this issue is apparent in most organizations. You have people who have gotten you to this point, you've been successful, but they can't take you there. They just can't take you to the next level because they don't have the skills, the training, the knowledge, or the intelligence to do what needs to be done. So at this point, you may have a production head, you may have an operations head or office manager and a sales manager, and they really need to take control, be competent in their departments, and run them without the CEO's hands-on. Stage 5, getting quite large now, 58 to 95 employees. Focus becomes back on the company. So how do these department heads now work together in harmony? They've been a little territorial in stage 4, and now they need to collaborate with the other departments to make sure everyone is playing well. Again, training becomes critical. Stage 6, strategic, 100 to 160 employees. The CEO at this point has become a visionary. They are looking to provide the vision, the impetus, and the department heads should be running the company. CEOs who are emotionally aware do well in this stage because they can feel what's going on in the company. They aren't actually, or should not be actually, involved in the day-to-day functioning operations of the company, but the culture. And finally, stage 7, 160 to 500 employees, getting quite bureaucratic at this point. The CEO is the one walking around, patting people on the back, encouraging them, connecting well, and getting everybody on board. Again, trying to understand and feel what's happening. So here's a quick look at all 7 stages. You'll notice that between the stages are flood zones and wind tunnels. Flood zones are times when production is at a max, so you're moving between stages and you are just up to your ears in business, which is a good problem. The issue with that is that you often try to hire staff and throw them at the problem without proper training, without making sure you're getting the right people in the right roles. So you just add to the complexity of the business by adding more bodies. The wind tunnels are times when you must look at changing your systems, processes, maybe a software change, maybe the way that you sell, might be the way that you hire or review employees. But as you grow, you can't continue to do the things that you've done in the past. You need to adapt as things get more complex. So I'm going to do a poll now. What stage is your company? If you would, click your size, and we'll see. All right, so some 1 to 10 is our largest category, and then nothing in the professional or integration area. Okay, so that gives me an idea. Next, we're going to look at the 27 challenges that James Fisher identified. So these are challenges that are apparent in all size companies, 500 or less employees. But based on your stage, you generally have certain challenges that you have in common with others at your stage. The importance of this is to understand that there are problems. Problems don't go away. The fact that you hire this person or get this piece of equipment or this software, I remember thinking that, oh, everything's going to be great once I do that. I'm going to hire this person. They're going to take care of that issue. Or got this new software coming in. Everybody's going to be much more productive. It's just different. You just have different issues. The issues never go away. So we're going to take a few minutes and look at the 27 challenges, and going to ask you to, the numbering didn't work out quite properly on this, but there are 27. The last one in the right column there is challenge expanding sales. So take a few minutes.
Brad, I just wanted to let everyone know that you can download a PDF of the 27 challenges. It's on your screen right now under the files. It should be able to allow you to download that so you can have that handy moving forward.
Thank you, Michael. All right, if Michael, if you would put the poll up, we'll have the 27 challenges on there, and choose up to 5 for your company. What are the issues that you think are most important to be solved at your company today? And Michael, can everyone see this poll?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm writing them down as the votes are coming in, so don't miss any. All right, I think everyone's, looks like no more coming in.
Yeah,
So,
while you're doing that, I just want to remind everyone that if they want to ask a question related to these 27, obviously we can't get to every single challenge in the next 40 minutes, but certainly type in a question related to, for example, your company with them.
yeah, and thank you, Michael. And questions will come to mind when we really get into these. So, a need for a flexible planning model. Michael, if you could move the poll over. There we go. I will get us to that question. Planning is critical to a business, obviously, and CEOs need to recognize that challenges, that the plans change. So some critical questions to ask at your company. And if you have questions, now would be a good time to type them in. So do you have a plan for growth? Do you have a 6-month plan? My companies, I like to have a no growth plan and a growth plan. So if things were to fall out of bed, what would we do? If things expand more rapidly than we expect, what should we do? Does the company evaluate its strategic planning concepts? How often are you pulling those out? Once a year, or do they go in a drawer and are they never heard from again? And most importantly, feedback loop. You'll see a common theme through a lot of the issues is communication. So is the planning pushed down, or is it evolving up? The whole premise of this model is to develop leadership within the organization so that the issues bubble up from the bottom. Those are the people closest to the issues, and you'd like them to solve the problems and be involved in that and not feel like they are a part of the problem. So creating a strategic plan from as many people as possible. Cross-functional employee groups. They need to understand what's going on in other areas of the company. And then communicate what your vision and mission are. This can't be done enough. It needs to be done from onboarding to regular company meetings. Lunch and learns, or beer and pizza meetings after work, or barbecues during the summer. But it's just reinforcing these things. As the CEO often thinks everybody thinks like they do not communicate enough. All right, next one was project management. Growing businesses, as we talked about the wind tunnels, you need the correct process system for solving problems. Complexity increases, and you can't solve problems the way you did in the past. One thing we work on a lot is understanding personalities, and this last question gets at that. Most CEOs, not all, but certainly most CEOs, are very self-willed, confrontational, and move without waiting. There are people in your organization who are just the opposite, sometimes afraid to take action without being clearly defined or told what to do. So processes help them do their job. They don't have to feel like they need to ask for permission when it's spelled out for them. So not having processes in place might be great for those that act without them, but it paralyzes perhaps 50% of your organization by not having them. Really, CEOs sometimes, the typical CEO sees no need for processes. They just want to figure things out by the seat of their pants. So are your processes captured, written down, and reviewed regularly? So there needs to be a team within each department that regularly looks at processes, improves them. There needs to be a feedback loop. The easiest way to create a process is, as you are solving a problem, to write it down. Create a notebook. This way it is part of the solving of the issue, and you don't have to go back and think about it. Just one page at a time, moving along. Second, are the processes being followed? If the processes are in place, I'm sure all of you have sellers in your organization. Sellers are famous for working around issues to solve problems, and sometimes they violate processes. So are they being followed? Having processes will not eliminate that issue. It's just part of the sales issue. Same token, you have people who are very analytical that want to follow the process all the time, and obviously we understand that processes aren't perfect all the time. What is a successful outcome? Have you defined it? Do you know? Are you being intentional about the results you're looking for, so you know when you have success, or you're just wandering? And the last on project management. Get feedback. Ask for your staff to be a part of the solution and not part of the problem. If they feel like they're part of the problem, they're going to fight you every step of the way. If you seek their feedback on processes, you will see that they are not only providing answers, but will get on board and then solve the problem. Talked about communication a little bit. I think our third ranked challenge, leadership staff communication gap. This becomes more and more difficult as your company grows. Again, in the 1 to 10 stage, when you have a poker at the helm, the poker, he or she is telling people every day what to do. So there is some direct feedback from leadership. As the company grows, this becomes more distant. There are more gaps. Again, leadership assumes that everyone in the organization knows what's going on. So you have to feel like you are over communicating all of the time. Is the vision and mission clear? What are the company's core values? Do you have a plan to share information? And it could be as simple as what I spoke of earlier, beer and pizza, or barbecues, or once a month meetings. But there needs to be some plan. Core values, you wouldn't think that you need to define those, but I've worked with clients who assume that everybody's going to get what the work ethic is, what the hours are that people are expected to work are. This needs to be part of the recruiting process and sharing those expectations. They need to be clearly defined. And you need to have a match. You want to hire people that are going to be a part of the team and not fight it. How is employee performance measured? Without a doubt, the biggest gaps we see in all our companies is that feedback. Employees, in order to feel valued, to feel like they are a part of the team, need to have a few things. They need to have autonomy, so their roles need to be spelled out. I call it their sandbox. They need to understand what it is they're allowed to do and what success looks like. They need to have mastery, so you have to train them. That's communicating, again, what you want them to do. And they need to have purpose. They need to understand what it is, how their job contributes to the success of the company. Mission, vision, all those things need to be tied in for an employee to feel appreciated and feel engaged. How often are your managers having one-on-one meetings with your direct reports? I get bucked on this all the time. Managers don't like doing one-on-ones, and I don't care if you do them walking down the hall, or sometimes you need some privacy, but taking a walk, going to lunch, they need to be regular. The more immediate the feedback you give, the better it works. And managers, at a minimum, need to do monthly formal sit-downs with their direct reports. Here's what our expectations are. Here's where you're succeeding. Here's where you need some work. This is what we're going to do the next 30 days. Communication. Help them succeed. All right, our next challenge, hiring quality staff. A big issue for almost all companies. We focus a lot on what the wrong hire costs the company. It's not only their salary, but morale, lost business, lost employees, others who may leave. We focus a lot on sanctioned incompetence. So this may sound childish, but it exists everywhere. When you think about being a child and having a brother or a sister, and when your sibling wasn't punished for something but you were, you started scratching your head and wondering what happened. Or if they get away with something and you know it's wrong, you all of a sudden start thinking, well, I'm going to try that. So sanctioned incompetence is at a base level in every company. So when you are not dealing with staff who are not performing well, it is a demotivator to the rest of the team. It is your job as a manager to correct the situation, and that may mean hiring other quality staff. So are your roles clearly defined? Are success outcomes understood? One area where managers dislike giving feedback is when they haven't clearly defined the outcome. They can't say, well, I can't hold this person accountable because I haven't shared with them what the expectations for the role are. So before you hire, define your roles. Do you have a process for hiring? Your company, this is especially true as you're growing. Now, when you think back to that small 1 to 10 size company, there is no process. It's the CEO grabbing people, throwing them at the problem. They need to change as the company grows. There needs to be a process to follow. So every manager is hiring the same way. Do you have a way to recognize what you're looking for? Are you training your managers how to hire? It is not something that people innately know. You need to give them the skills to hire well. Hiring quality staff, where almost every company has an issue. Next issue, difficulty dealing. I'm looking for it here. Difficulty anticipating problem areas before they surface. So understanding where your company is going, where it is currently, is extremely important. It will help with who you hire. We need someone who today can deal with issues, but tomorrow may also need to add these issues. Or with your recruiting. Today we don't need this person. In the next 6 months, 12 months, we are going to need someone who can do X, Y, or Z. Also allows for better planning, resource allocation in addition to recruiting. Wouldn't it be great to know exactly what issues you're going to be facing in the next few months? Do you have a plan for profit? Often as companies grow, all they focus on is top-line revenue. Get that business in. They need to understand where you make money. Are managers rewarded for employee retention? And I would add that retention there doesn't mean just keeping employees, but in keeping employees that are doing their jobs well, who are performing well and providing, being an asset to the company. Is the CEO getting that feedback? And is the leadership style of the CEO one that can take a few knocks and dings? Some CEOs don't want to hear it. It's their way or the highway. And this is especially true in that at teenage stage 3, they've got to really understand that they need to trust and allow others to solve problems. Often CEOs are the best problem solvers in the organization, and they train people to bring them problems to solve. Problem is, the CEO has no bench. The CEO has no one they can rely on to solve problems because they've trained them to bring them their problems. So the CEO needs to turn it around and train people to solve problems. So here's some things to do to anticipate problems. Dialogue, obviously, communication, having those at least monthly meetings, understanding what's going on, a 12-month financial plan, and train and empower, what I was talking about with the CEOs who want to be the problem solvers, the hub of the wheels, to recognize. And you're going to have some bumps with those issues when you let others solve problems. I refer to it as training wheels. So you need to give appropriate latitude, start with training wheels, and then you run alongside, and then finally you stop and the bike keeps going, and you have someone who is a real asset to the organization. Can your company articulate and define its problems? So we're dealing with some today. 27 challenges will get you started. There's some more specific ones I'm sure you can come up with. Are you open to hearing those problems? And you can use CEO here as well as leadership team. You want to involve all areas of the company so that people are the solutions to the problem, not the problems themselves. What metrics do you need to track your business? How quickly can you come to understand what the issues are through those metrics? Again, that's one of those wind tunnel items. The larger the company gets, the more refined and exact the metrics need to be. And our last one, not able to quickly get systems and procedures in place as the company grows. As I mentioned earlier, throwing people at the problem just creates more problems, more complexity, and you really need to focus in on a process that deals with the problem. The issue is you're so busy trying to get your product or service out the door that you don't have time to do that. So you have to force it. You can't wait to get bigger. I think I skipped the wrong. No, that's the right one. Company plan for growth, assumptions for systems and procedures, understanding what you need to do. And scatter thinking there is just that, not having everybody on the same page, agreeing to what the issue is and how to solve it. So again, it's not one person trying to solve the problem, but a team. A team has feedback from the organization, the exact issues, so that when you create a process or a system, it is appropriate for all and not just the one person that one person think that may not really solve the issue. How are employees rewarded in your organization? Is it only based on sales? Is it only based on numbers of getting things out the door and not creating an environment that improves the overall organization? And finally, our last slide here. Start to think of your growth issues as system issues, not people issues. So if you have the wrong people, it's your system. You're either hiring incorrectly, or you don't have the training in place to develop your staff, or they're not getting the feedback they need. That's a system problem. Get feedback from employees on what's working and what's not. They know. Empower them to help design the solutions. I've done a lot of talking. Love to hear some questions, if there are any. If not, I appreciate your time today. And as you can tell, I'm eat and breathe this stuff. There are a lot of things that go on in small organizations, and no one quick Band-Aid for everyone. But helping organizations flourish is something we at Eure Consulting love to do.
Brad, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to share 6 or 7 of the 27 challenges with all of us today. I think this is really great. I'm gonna, for those of you that wanted to get another copy of the 27, all 27, I'm gonna put that back up on the screen. And for those of you that are curious about all the slides, feel free. We'll have this webinar recorded. It was recorded and it will be live, available on our website, and hopefully by next week or before the end of the year. But I just wanted to ask a couple questions. One off the top of my head here, Brad. You mentioned earlier the challenges facing nonprofits and for-profits pretty much cover are in these 27 cover all companies, organizations. I'd be curious, what is your thoughts as far as are there specific challenges that seem to rise to the top, more relevant to specific industries that you've noticed in your clients and so forth in the field?
Well, so for nonprofits, the issue there is you're often dealing with volunteers. So volunteers take special handling. Obviously, benefits that you're not paying them, but you don't have the control and you just can't make them do what you want to do all the time. The other issue is nonprofits with raising money. So when you think about donors, donors need to be handled differently than a typical for-profit customer. But other than that, it's again just defining the type of individual and the functions you want those people to cover to do those things, and finding people that match those roles. So instead of a traditional salesperson in a nonprofit, you have someone who is more skilled, more gifted at dealing with donors. But in general, in for-profits, it is really the same issues. There's some variations. I deal with software as a service, home building, engineering, and really the issues are similar. It's just really being specific about how you define roles. So in software as a service, you have people that are called customer success. So think about it as customer service, and they have a somewhat slight sales. They look for renewals and also for upsells, but they're not typical salespeople. So little things like that vary, but again, it's just finding people who are good at doing that and clearly defining expectations.
Oh, very, very important mindset to carry. Before moving on to the next question, I thought I would just launch our survey real quick. So hopefully in everyone's browsers, you'll see a survey pop up, and please do take a minute to complete that before your next activity this afternoon, if possible. And for those of you watching the recording, you're welcome to also take the survey as well. So another question, as far as creative companies that are applying some of these solutions to these challenges really effectively, almost to the extent of ones that you follow, are there any in particular that you would highlight, either recent ones or ones historically that you've been observing that would be worth looking at the history of the company and how it's grown successfully?
So generally, there would be large companies that are very transparent about what they do. You think of Zappos, but a lot of the metrics just don't apply to smaller groups. Some of the things that Zappos did very well was empower employees so that if you had an issue, the customer service rep was there and able to solve the problem. Some of it's a little bit of experimentation. Was it Zappos or Google that did away with either group heads or department heads and let everybody manage themselves? That was not successful. In general, you need a structure where there is accountability. Some of it, some organizations are very loose about that. Just so people are getting feedback, I encourage our clients to be conversational about it. It's not emotional. It's not you versus them. It's you together, not power over, but power with. And through that conversation, helping them reach their goals. If you don't know what their goals are, you're going to have a problem helping them reach them. So it's, again, being conversational, and it's not one-sided.
Great. This question is coming from a attendee today, and they were wondering sort of the process that you, in your consulting role, if you were to meet with a company, say, I think in the early stages, 11 to 20 employees, and their main issue of growing pains is that they're having, and where do you start to define these issues? What would you do as your first step with this potential client?
First step is to understand the CEO. So what is her strength and where might she have challenges? And then understanding the business, the industry in which they're in, and understanding what direction they want to go, and then developing programs around helping to maximize, leverage the CEO's strengths. So if you think of a coin, and if all of our skills and things we like doing are on both sides of the coin, I'm sorry, on one side of the coin, and all those things that we don't like doing are on the other side of the coin, is getting them to be able to focus on the things they love doing and are passionate about. They're more motivated. In the small business, when you're a poker, you're doing those things that you don't like doing. For me, it was, payroll or music logs or those type things. I wasn't really motivated about it. I was determined and did them, but I really wasn't looking forward to it. So, and it really took me away from the strengths that I should be focusing on. So it's really all about getting the CEO in the right spot and helping them, giving them some things to help their company flourish, the communication, the feedback, the hiring processes that are necessary to make a well-rounded company and really employees that are advocates for their company.
Terrific. Just a little plug as we wrap up this hour. I've one more question for Brad, but for those of you joining us live and before the holidays, next week we will have our final online networking event of the year. It's a ULOG themed online networking event, so a little bit of a uh, enjoyable, fun way to connect online with one another around the country, around the world, and enjoy the traditions of the ULOG of William and Mary's long-standing tradition. Um, so I hope you'll join us on the 22nd of December at 12 Eastern Time, same time as today's webinar. And Brad, I'd be curious as we close out the hour. We talked about a few companies, but who are you following CEO-wise or senior leadership out there that you've been either reading books of or following their blogs or posts on LinkedIn? Are there a few standouts of people that you think have, um, you know, at all stages of their company's roles are really doing some interesting things that you would highlight in today's session?
No, but really because all the public information is about the big companies and the big guys. I would like to know more about the two guys who started Uber, for instance. They were having coffee one day and couldn't get a cab. I think they were in Paris or somewhere, and boom, Uber started, and they're still the CEOs today. So I would love to understand how they have adapted and changed and getting through those processes. But almost every CEO is different, and every company's different, and so there's really isn't anybody that I share with our clients because it's really about very specifically the CEO's strengths and weaknesses and how they can leverage themselves.
So it's more focusing on internal issues that you may have as a CEO or your own company leadership role,
Right.
rather than looking at others to model
And
what
and
you
then
see.
a skill development from there. So it's really very specific about what the CEO's strengths are and how to accentuate those.
Great. Well, with that, we've come to the end of the hour. I encourage all of you that may have a question to that we didn't get to today to follow up with Brad. His consulting firm's website is up here, and there's plenty of ways to contact him on that site as well as on LinkedIn. And Brad, thank you again for taking the time to share this hour with us, and thank you all for joining us for our final webinar of the year. Look forward to having you join us again in the new year, and I wish everyone a happy and healthy holiday season wherever you may be and your travels may take you. Thank you so much, Brad.
Thank you. Bye.